We are joined by Barack Obama's 2008, otherwise said in English, campaign manager David Plouffe, whose new book, A Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump, comes out on, of all days, Super Tuesday. As we've learned from our correspondents, certain facts, certain observations. I've looked over at you, and I've seen a raised eyebrow. What has your interest from what was just reported in the last round?
Well, I think it shows Bernie Sanders showing real strength in the Latino community, what's going to matter in states like Texas, where a lot of people are already voting. That occurs on Super Tuesday, and in the African-American community. So both in Iowa and New Hampshire, Sanders won in the mid-20s. We'll see where things end up today. But if he's into the 30s, much less the mid-30s, I think he'll gain some delegates out of here, and not an insignificant number. But what does that mean for California and Texas and North Carolina? And so he's showing strength here. And the difference between a front runner like Bernie Sanders, it's not 50, but mid-30s versus mid-20s, could not be more important from a delegate standpoint. So he's showing real strength. The other thing that's interesting to me from a general election standpoint, you see the number of African Americans and Latinos identifying as moderate conservative. You know, Trump's going to get blown out in those two demographics, but they see some potential there. And if they can just get a point or two extra out of there compared to 16, it can make the difference. So fascinating.
How long ago did your ballot arrive at your home in California?
About 10 days.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, over 1.3 million have been returned already. So that's the thing, when Sanders is doing well right now. And so as people in Texas and Florida and other states are voting, he's going to benefit from that scenario. So I think what has to happen in this race is somebody is going to have to emerge, ideally before Super Tuesday, but certainly after Super Tuesday, who's the main contender to Sanders and isn't just getting close. They're going to have to beat him by 20 or 25 points in states like Arizona, Ohio, and Florida to really get the delegates close enough. So I think what this shows today, again, now this is a caucus, it's not a primary.
Right.
So more activists, but Sanders' strength with the African-American community. I mean, he was in the single digits, 2 or 3 months ago in a lot of places. He's now climbed into the mid-20s here. There's polls in South Carolina showing growing strength there. So that is, I think, the big story out of here is Bernie Sanders is growing. Now, that sounds silly because he got over 40% last time, but that was a two-person race. So he's showing strength in parts of the Democratic primary electorate that I think if you forecast what that means in Super Tuesday and the other March states could not be more important.
I can't let you off there. Do you care to hazard a guess as to who that Sanders challenger may be who emerges as the definitive Sanders challenger?
Well, I think somewhat depends a little bit. It looks like we may have a bunch of people bunched up, but who comes in second here? Is someone like Joe Biden able to do well in South Carolina? Elizabeth Warren is showing some resurgence. But that's what's going to happen, because if Bernie Sanders has grown into the 30s with a diverse electorate, even if he doesn't grow anymore, if the rest of the field's getting 14, 15, 16, 17, he's just going to keep adding to his delegate pile every week. So I think some candidates are going to have a tough decision to make, though, because if you don't have the ability to get many delegates on Super Tuesday, much less after that, I think you have to take a hard look in the mirror about your ability to go on. We have the Bloomberg factor. The debate clearly hurt him. But you have both Steyer, I think something's not getting enough attention. We've got Bloomberg spending a lot of money. Yeah. He's going to get vote and delegates. It all wouldn't have gone to a Biden, but would have gone to other candidates. Then you've got Steyer in South Carolina, who's polling at least at 20. And I think a lot of that probably does come out of Joe Biden. So I think the two billionaires in the race are definitely having an impact. I don't think they're likely to be the nominee. The other thing I'd just say about this contested convention conversation we're having, in my view, it's preposterous. Now, if Bernie Sanders has 1,400 delegates and somebody else has close to 1,400, then I think the convention could get interesting. But if Bernie Sanders enters the end of this process with hundreds of votes, first of all, on the subsequent ballots, the pledged delegates to the other candidates aren't bound to whatever their candidate decides to do. And I think a lot of them will say, the person who got the most delegates, I'm going to go for them. And the other thing, he's dominating with young vote. So the notion that we're going to say, you got the most delegates, maybe not a majority, but the party leaders have decided that the person who's got all that support from young voters, the future of the party, guess what? We're going to give it to somebody else based on electability. And right now, there's no evidence that would suggest that Bernie Sanders is so much less electable than the rest. Now, if by July, he's down 10 to Trump and everybody else would win, maybe a different question. And my prediction is, if there is a scenario that candidates are saying, we're going to go to a contested convention, I bet Trump's campaign lays off Sanders until July. Doesn't want to damage him. So they'll be ready, because I think they want to run against him. They may be wrong about that. So I think we have to watch that carefully, too.
Fascinating, fascinating analysis. Boy, will this be interesting to watch as